Between 2000 and 2010, the number of white and black biracial Americans more than doubled, and the population of adults with a white and Asian background increased by 87%. Early studies suggested that children from multicultural households were at greater risk for lower levels of self-esteem, trust, feelings of acceptance, and stated that they exhibited greater levels of anxiety, restlessness, aggressiveness, and withdrawal. However, their evidence provided was weak and produced mixed findings or suggested no differences. So what is it? Does living in a bicultural household truly impact a child's quality of life? And how may the parents of these households factor into this? So this begs the question, how might living in a bicultural household impact the relationship that parents have with their children? And furthermore, how may racial and ethnic socialization influence the child's self-perception of their own cultural and racial background?
We made this documentary to explore the influences that living in a bicultural household can have on the relationship that a child has with their parents. This is an open exploration into language, prejudice, culture, and self-perception through the interviews conducted on 4 distinctive families of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. We spoke to the Brown family, the Nicolosi family, the Champion family, and the Westland family, all of which have differing degrees of connection to their respective racial backgrounds.
This boy and girl coming home from school look quite content with life. And why not? They're looking forward to an important date, dinner at home with the family. Let father and mother guide the conversational trend if they desire. After all, they made all this possible and may want to talk over their day with each other. Don't monopolize the conversation and go on and on without stopping. Nothing destroys the charm of a meal more quickly. Do remember simply this. Treat the other members of your family with the same respect and cordiality you would show your most treasured friend outside the family circle.
Language, culture, and identity have a close relationship. Cultures differ from place to place, and each person is often connected to multiple cultures. Language is closely connected to the spread of culture. For example, most languages contain minor differences such as dialect or slang, which can often indicate the cultural background of the speaker. Bilingualism is on the rise, and within bicultural households, how often a second language is practiced can often fluctuate, and is often linked with how connected bicultural children feel with their own ethnic identity and their relationship with their culture and parents. In monolingual households, in the case of the Brown family, we found this to be especially true.
Oh, okay, good. My name is Danessa Hoki Brown. I'm 46 years old, and my ethnic background is Japanese. Even though my mother was born and raised in Japan and she immigrated here, she didn't speak Japanese in the home. She spoke English. And my father, who actually speaks Japanese fluently, he also spoke to us in English as well. So we were raised speaking English. But growing up speaking English and then raising my own family, there wasn't a lot of Japanese things that I could actually teach them. I couldn't teach them the language. We would visit Japan every few years, but I never lived there for a prolonged period of time. So I didn't really adopt a lot of the Japanese cultures. There's a lot of culture that's based in language, for sure, right? The way you communicate with each other, that's the basis of a lot of cultures, right? So if you lose that skill of speaking that particular language, you do surrender that part of identifying with that culture as well.
I'm Emiko Brown. I am 17 years old, and I am Japanese and American Canadian. My first name is Emma. And about maybe a year and a half ago, I started going by the middle name of mine, Emiko, because I disliked the whiteness of my name. So, but that's also why I switched all of my social medias and things to Emiko Serrano, which Serrano is not a name that I have at all, but it's a Japanese title. And new people that I meet often think that my full name is Emiko Serrano, and I like that a lot. But yeah, in short, I do try and distance from the white side a lot.
Hi, I'm Marin. I'm 14 and I'm half Japanese and half white. We've never really made being Japanese part of like our base. It's never been like we have to follow Japanese traditions, we have to do blah 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 blah.
Do you think that there is like a difference in how you two interpret your Asian side?
I think she's more connected to it than I am. But also she does her thing. She likes being Asian. One time she looked at me and she's like, "You look more Asian than me," and I don't like that. I was like,
Yeah, 見つかれる。何？あれ？ Oh, sorry.
Okay, now I'm not gonna stop laughing, but whatever. All right. So just want. Okay. Yeah. So my name is Ben Westland. I'm 17 years old. I'm half white and half Japanese. I feel pretty dang connected. I can speak Japanese pretty fluently, so I'm pretty connected to my Japanese side. And my mom is obviously Japanese, so I can talk to her in Japanese. So.
My name is Ritsuko Westland. I am 48, almost 49 years old, and I'm Japanese, and I came from Japan in 2004. We want them to speak Japanese to their cousins or grandparents to communicate. So that's the number one goal.
My name is Sry Westland. I'm 13 years old, and I'm half white and half Japanese. My dad has the most power because he can speak he can speak English well and he can write English well. He understands it better than my mom. So that's mostly, yeah. But if we go to Japan, then I feel like my mom has a little bit more power.
So, I mean, obviously my mom is Japanese, so I speak Japanese to my mom more often, and that's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, I speak Japanese with my dad sometimes, and he often, like, when I use forks to eat rice instead of chopsticks, he goes, "Wow, you're not even half Japanese." And that's kind of the joke here. When I'm talking about school and like my future, I tend to go more towards where my dad went, but also, you know, I talk to my mom about that stuff. So I mean, it's like half and half. It depends what I'm talking about.
Parents who don't teach their children their native language may express regret and say that the household is more American than any other culture. Additionally, families that cannot unify under a language often report confusion within the household and will more heavily identify as American than bicultural. This can often create tensions.
My name is Rosario Nicolosi, and I moved to the U.S. in 1973 from Italy, the southern part of Italy, from Sicily. Yeah.
And how would you describe the relationship that you have with your kids?
Eggshells. Very deep eggshells.
I think it's good, friendly. I love my kids.
Ooh, that's a heavy question. Yeah. Well, the relationship with my parents, I think, is kind of civil. To put it at the least.
Do you think that living in a bicultural household, you know, with your Italian culture and your wife's Mexican culture, has influenced the development or the relationship that you guys have with your kids, like made you guys more distant or even more close? Because of
I think more distant because we cannot really apply certain activity together as a wife and dad, and as long that we could not really apply that in depth. That's something that we're doing as a family. We could not do it. Even with the language, we're able to give them a good, strong one language. You know, did not matter which ones. You know, I was trying to push for the English. So that's what caused most the language. I think that we're not able to develop.
I really don't feel connected to either side. It's just the fact that a lot of people are just like, "Oh, you're Mexican, you speak this language?" I'm like, "Nope, I was raised here." So I just try not to associate myself with either language.
When I married my husband, I did not speak English. So the kids, start speaking Spanish at the beginning, when they were little. As they grew up older, they lost the Spanish and they just kept the English. They become lazy.
My mom spoke to us strictly Spanish for a long time, and so we were able to communicate back and forth. And then, of course, when we went to school, we started learning English, and then both English and Spanish was being taught in the house.
Do you think that there's a reason why your mom didn't really speak as much Spanish to Eliana in some ways? Just because there's...
You know what? I'm not too sure. It may have something to do with us not having that much family here anymore. My mom didn't speak it to us still. I think just as we lived here longer, the less Spanish we spoke.
Do you think that over time your household has become slowly more like Americanized?
Oh yeah, I think I would agree with that, yeah. My dad was really funny. He didn't want us learning Italian. And he specifically didn't want us to know because he didn't want us to get confused with any other languages.
We really did not have a very strong language to really teach them. So it was our English, or some Spanish. I kept them more toward the Spanish because I don't want to get them too confused.
And I always asked my parents, why can't you be like this parent? Like, why can't you be like this lady? Or, like, I always compared my mom to my friend's mom. Like, Like, I loved that lady. She was like the epiphany of a white household that I always wanted.
In the cities, in the towns and country, we work together. We are many races and religions and nationalities. We are the men and women of America. Her ancestors came over on the Mayflower, while he came himself from Italy. Both are people of America. American farmer, American farmer. The people of America.
From the ages of 3 to 5, children gain awareness of racial features and the differences between races. Parents who decide to not discuss racism or just race in general can imply that race is a taboo topic, and research shows that children who are not taught about race have poorer psychological well-beings. On the flip side, parents who instill racial pride and knowledge must be careful of how they go about it. They must emphasize pride, yet still discuss prejudice. There must be a balance to teach kids to have a healthy relationship with their own race. Family members that are a part of minority ethnic groups have continuously endured forms of oppression that can affect the way they care for their children, the dynamics of the household, and the way they racially socialize their children.
When I was growing up, I grew up in Texas, where there weren't a lot of Asians. And one experience I remember, we went to a restaurant in the middle of rural Texas. And it wasn't that crowded, but it was still crowded. And so we put our name down for a table. And we would see other families getting pulled up and getting seated for their tables. They would give us an excuse like, oh, we're trying to get a table big enough for your family, which was a family of 5, trying to find a table for 5 that would be more comfortable for you. And eventually we realized it was because we were Asian, and so we weren't getting seated. We, rather than make it an issue, we, like good Japanese people, we kind of quietly turned around and we went to a different restaurant.
When I was a kid, the boy I had a crush on was like, you know, we bombed Japan. And I didn't even get that. I didn't even understand it. I was like, what? He was like, yeah, we bombed Japan. That's why I don't like you. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was being just totally racist. And I didn't understand that it was like a racial thing that he was targeting me for until a lot later. I forget about this sometimes, but a kid in my grade, I want to say sophomore year, called me a chink. And this was during the coronavirus thing. There was a lot of anti-Asian hate going around, and so that kind of happened.
sometimes when I feel like there might be that situation, again, like maybe when we're traveling or in an area that's different from our home, it does affect how I might interact with people, which I think my girls do see and they do watch. I'm sure that they've seen how I talk to people change a little bit, because I might feel that might come up as an issue. So that in a way I think may have affected, how they've grown up.
Hello, my name is Trasai Champion, and all my friends call me Sai because it's easier. My racial background is African and Native American, and there's some white in there, and it's a mixed bag. When Nat and Jordan were old enough to be going out in the world and interacting on their own, each of them got the talk, where I explained that they will be viewed differently. And it was interesting because Nathaniel had an instance where he saw that firsthand.
I was in a car and we got pulled over because we were doing donuts in a parking lot. You know, all kinds of things are going through my head because in the current state of the country, police are usually not the kind of people you want to have run-ins with. But man, I was afraid. I had my hands on the dashboard just to make sure. I said, "Yes, sir."
Yes, officer, that's wonderful. Thank you, sir. And we were just going to do that, and we'll get it right out of your way. Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Don't ever talk again. You know? So, yeah, he
made me feel a little bit powerless, in all honesty. You know, it sucks being predisposed to punishments, I guess, where, like, just because of the color of my skin, I'm an easy target. People will more likely believe someone else than believe me.
Do you think that maybe like discrimination or prejudices has changed how maybe your parents have raised you, or how like their relationship or dynamic that they have with you?
Probably. There's a good chance that there are some things that are different than if there are some prejudices or something that I've been raised with or without that I wouldn't have been raised with or without if I lived in one or the other. But I don't know any specific things. Yeah.
Yeah. Mostly I would say it doesn't influence me so much because I'm so friggin' clueless. Like walking down an arbitrary street with my wife, she'll be pointing out all sorts of dynamics that occur in this or that conversation, whatever. Okay, no, I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that person just pickpocket that person. No. I do think Nat's education in elementary school suffered with certain children, certain teachers. Like, kindergarten was wonderful. First grade, there was a time, like right after the beginning of school, where I stopped by the office to drop off something, and Nat was alone at the table outside in the back of the school, just sort of crying. So that, yeah, there are things that I think happen to the kids because of various teachers that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
They'll get up in your face and yell at you, go back to your country. I would be very open about it, be like, oh, I'm Hispanic and Sicilian. And then if they have a MAGA hat on, then I'm just going to be like, oh, I'm white. I'm Italian. I come from the island, Sicily.
I think in a sense it makes me more protective of my parents because, again, with the generations changing and mindsets changing, I think especially after like President Trump ended up becoming president, and it has made me more protective of my parents, making sure that they're okay. I feel like my mom being a little bit singled out, knowing that she is Mexican, she may have been singled out in certain things. I don't know if I would say it makes me closer to my parents just because of the way that I grew up in their house. I just kind of tried to get out ASAP. But I think I've just become more aware of if they are singled out or not.
They both understand that there's that added something that they have to be careful of. And it was hard having to do that. It's sad having to do that. Yeah, it's distressing.
Sue, honey.
Oh, Larry.
Well, what's the matter?
It's the folks. We had a terrible scene. I couldn't sleep a wink. They don't approve.
We'll elope, honey.
But Larry, I wanted a church wedding. And all the parties and showers for me, too. And my folks, that would break Mom's heart.
Well, we're the ones that are getting married, not your folks.
I don't know, Larry. I read somewhere that a marriage without parents' approval has 2 strikes on it from the start. But if eloping's the only way...
No, maybe it isn't.
One pattern that we observed that we found interesting was a strange phenomenon of familial tensions disappearing once a child is born.
My mom was doing an exchange program, I think, with English stuff, something like that. And then I think my dad was originally my mom's teacher in that class, yeah. And then and then eventually they just came here, and then that was it. Then they got married. I'm going this completely from memory, but I think my grandparents were like telling my mom, like, "Oh my God, you're going away to like see like this white guy," and like you're gonna have to see this white guy. Like, why don't you just like marry someone here? Like, what are you doing?
I really super appreciated my husband's dad. He was a professor at the college we went to. And so he dealt with a whole bunch of different people and different things, and he was just welcomed me with open arms. He was a great guy. Mom was not so much that way. And stayed standoffish really until Nathaniel was born. It was pretty neat because she didn't come out to our wedding.
Yeah, mom didn't come to our wedding. That resistance on her part, stayed like for a good decade, I think. So
when Nathaniel was born and Eric's mom came out and saw him and held him for the first time, a change happened.
So my grandparents used to be incredibly strict, like my Japanese ones, like the strict, stereotypical like Asian, like, oh my God, you'll get beat if you don't get good grade, like that kind of stuff. But then my parents had me, and they softened up completely. Like my mom said it was like crazy how much my grandpa just like mellowed out and stuff after they had me. So I don't know. I don't know if that's even like a cultural thing, but like that might just be grandparenting. They had me and they're like, oh my God, we're so sorry, like whatever, like your family's great and whatever. So yeah, I mean,
it's like, oh, this little person, look at their tiny hands.
Yeah.
And I guess they do look kind of like me. This was mine. They're brilliant because of me. It's like, okay, sure.
To succeed in something, you have to have a purpose and make plans for reaching it and work at it all the time.
Sounds crazy to me.
Well, what are you doing after graduation?
I'll think about that later.
Are you planning what you'll be doing next semester?
Good night, no. Why should I?
Well, what about next month or next week?
I don't know.
You do need a purpose and a plan. You should be working on your future right now. Well, have you ever figured out what you'll be like in a few years?
Each parent brings a set of culture, beliefs, and ideas when they begin to parent their children. And in the case of bicultural households, the two parents must merge their cultures and beliefs together. Studies show that the way that parents raise their children drastically impacts their proceeding lives, even after leaving their household. And the norms that each parent was raised with seeps into the way that they parent their own children.
So my mother is an interesting case study. She grew up and in a fairly large family. She had to do a bunch of things sort of at an early age. Her father was fairly distant, as well as working other jobs and all that. And her mom, wanted her to get married, fairly early. She didn't do that. She went to school. She put herself through school. She kidnapped her sister after high school, and the three of them grabbed a Model A, and they drove all across the West. She did all sorts of stuff, and that's Wen was very, very proud of that. So I think I tried to remember what made my parents feel good, what they took, and try and make it possible for my kids to do that.
My dad was a sergeant in the military, and my mom worked for the State Department. So we were a very regimented, I lived a very sheltered life, and they make fun of me of it for still. Yeah, my bringing up was very strict. And so I was like, well, I would like to give them a little of the freedom and the ability to try new things that I didn't get when I was younger and see how that goes.
So it's Japan. We don't take kids to school and we don't pick them up. So kids need to walk or ride a bus or ride a bike so I don't know. When they were little, I think Japanese kids are a little more independent. To me, the parents shouldn't be really like friends with the kids. So still I want to be a mother, but the child or children is not my possession. I'm not sure. I'm not really tiger mom, so I really wanted to introduce the Japanese culture to the kids or something like that. I just love some like a Japanese festival or some seasonal event and those kind of stuff and fun stuff.
On New Year's Day, there's like a certain meal you eat, because in Japan, New Year's is a celebration for like multiple days or like a week or something like that. So we have like certain meals and like things we do.
There's this thing called mamemaki in Japanese, and basically what it is I think it's like February 2nd or 3rd. You go to the different rooms of the house and you throw peanuts at the walls and at the ceiling and at the floor, and the tradition is that it wards off like evil spirits. Usually one or two members of the household will dress up with this on, and then you get to throw peanuts at them. And what?
Children who learn about their ethnic culture are more likely to have a better connection to their ethnic identity and the connection they have with their ethnic parent. As described earlier, Japanese society places emphasis on politeness and good manners, while American society stresses it less. Small cultural norm differences between the Westlands was seen but resolved through healthy communication. The roles for women and men in the household was also influenced by Japanese cultural norms.
You talked about this briefly, but do you think that having, your two daughters, like growing up with having two different racial backgrounds has influenced their development, or is it, not much?
Oh, I think so. I really do think so, because my husband and I talk about this a lot. Growing up in Japanese culture, you have these expectations of respect for your elders and obeying rules and following through on things. And so I think that has affected the way that they've developed, because I also have shared with them how important I believe education is. Also understanding what the rules are and following within the rules to be a good citizen among your community, your family, and what other social circles that you're involved in. So I do think that has translated into it. Whereas my husband, he's a little bit more laid back, and he's like, let them go out, let them go play, let them go do things, let them try things out. So I think there's a little bit of there's definitely a different way of parenting, and I think whatever the girls want, that's which parent they go to ask for permission, right? So if they know I'm going to say no, then they just ask their dad first. I think anytime two people from different backgrounds come together, there's a little bit of acclimating to each other, right? You're trying to understand where the other person comes from. Sometimes you don't even realize that you don't agree on something until the situation presents itself, and you together have to come up with a plan where you both work together, right? So our parenting styles, when we came together, even though he came from a more relaxed American type of a background and I came from a more rigid, rule-following type of a Japanese background, I think we have this common ground too that's based on something that's different. So we have a religious background, we have a spiritual base, and so I think my husband and I were able to connect on that level too. And so while we might have two different cultures, we had that part that was the same, and that's become a super important part for our family. And so building on that commonality, we were able then to take our little differences and realize that they were very little differences, and we had something that we agreed on that was bigger than us.
Even though Danessa grew up in America, Japanese cultural norms were adopted into her own set of beliefs and influenced the way that she parented, just as Cameron's traditional American upbringing influenced his. The Brown family was able to unify under one common ground, that being religion, to establish their own beliefs and conditions for the household. So while culture influenced Danessa's parenting style, she didn't spread it to her kids.
Well, at this point, my kids, they are more Americanized than anything else. Because for Eliana, the youngest, I don't think I have put too much culture on her, because she's more Americanized, and she kind of I don't impose in my kids' culture. If they don't want it, it's okay.
The choice of parents to not overtly spread their culture to their children is a strange phenomenon. But even if parents don't share all aspects of their culture, they will subconsciously share the norms and expectations from their ethnic or racial background. This can be positive or negative, which in this case is expressed through hypocrisy and sexist treatment.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like we're expected to learn how to cook, know how to cook and stuff. We gotta clean. My dad and my brother can, do whatever the heck they want around the house and not have to worry about picking it up. But we particularly have to pick it up. So mainly when it comes to cooking and cleaning, those expectations are there. There was also another, it just also kind of ties into when I was getting married. When we were having the fire evacuations, I ended up cooking for everybody that was at my house, and my mom was like, "Oh my God, Nana, I love your dinner. I love your breakfast. This is so good. Now you have my blessing that you can get married." So indicating that okay, I know how to cook, now I'm ready to get married, and be this wife, particularly.
Yeah, so what they usually expect of me is to have a kid by now. But when they actually talk to me, they're just like, wow, you are different. I don't wear makeup because of it, because a lot of our culture is wearing makeup. I never put on makeup because it just didn't feel right.
Into your house, like how did it manifest itself in your household?
So with me, I'm a woman. I'm not really taking care, I'm a trophy. For instance, my dad has always been very occupied with how I looked, how I act, and my mom was just like, you have to be religious, you have to love God for who he, and all that kind of dealio. So for me, I just don't do it. My dad's more obsessed with the way my body looks. So he has always told me to look good, you gotta look pretty. I think he's more obsessed with it, and my mom, not so much. But she does make fun of my stretch marks, and my dark marks, and my pimples. And what else? There's something else. Oh, I'm so used to it.
As the number of bicultural households rise, learning how parents integrate and racially socialize their children is important to ensure a culturally knowledgeable and diverse set of multicultural children. Being cautious of tension, prejudices, and culture shock is important for parents to be aware of when creating the foundations of their household.
However, kids who grow up in bicultural households will experience culture and an environment completely unique to themselves and is separate from monoracial households.
Is there anything else you want to add that you think might be like pertinent or important for our documentary, or like the question of like the biracial or bicultural experience influencing parent-child relationships? Or
Let's see. I think my last thoughts would be, I think it's very important that people understand where they come from, what their ancestors have experienced, because that can definitely help them understand a little bit more of who they are, and help them understand who their family is. But at the same time, I also think it's important that they understand that that's where they came from, but that's not the only thing of who they are. And so developing and adopting cultures that have been shared with you, but then also adopting other cultures that are part of you to make you the best person that you are. Yeah, you're welcome. Is that what you need?
As Americans, we have cultivated the land and raised the food to feed the people. And we have built the cities that run the business of the people. The whole world has contributed its people, and its people have become Americans. America is a land whose people shared what they knew and worked together. America has benefited, and we have benefited. We are the people of America.